The origins of World War I. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Learn English Through History. Let's dive into the origins of the First World War, a topic that remains debated by historians over a century later. The assassination that sparked a crisis. It all began in June 1914 with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife, Sophie. This event triggered a chain reaction, known as the July Crisis, ultimately leading to a massive global conflict. But what caused this crisis to escalate? Let's take a step back and explore the broader context. Long-term causes, nationalism and rivalries. Before 1914, Europe was already tense. Industrialization created wealth, but also social inequalities. To manage unrest, many leaders promoted nationalism and imperial expansion. Countries like Britain, France, and Russia had vast empires. Then came Germany. Germany, a newly unified state in 1871, sought its place in the sun by building its empire and navy. This challenged Britain and France, who already dominated global trade and colonies. Militarization and alliances. As rivalries grew, so did military power. Germany's naval buildup prompted Britain to respond with advanced warships like the Dreadnought. Meanwhile, Austria-Hungary and Russia competed for influence in the Balkans, a region destabilized by the decline of the Ottoman Empire. By 1914, alliances had divided Europe into two camps. 1. The Triple Entente, Britain, France, and Russia. 2. The Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. These alliances were meant for protection, but also meant that a conflict involving one nation could drag in many others. The Moroccan Crisis, a warning sign. Germany tested the Franco-British alliance twice in Morocco, 1905 and 1911. Both times, Britain and France stood firm, frustrating Germany and increasing tensions. German leaders, like Chief of Staff Helmuth von Moltke, believed that war was inevitable. The road to war, the July Crisis. In today's episode, we continue exploring the events leading up to the First World War, focusing on the growing tensions and the infamous July Crisis of 1914. Germany's shift and rising Balkan tensions. By the early 1900s, Germany began prioritizing its army over its navy, which had angered Britain. This move forced France and Russia to expand their armies. Germany felt the odds were turning against them and believed their best chance for success might come from a sooner conflict. At the same time, tensions in the Balkans were boiling over. Austria-Hungary's annexation of Bosnia in 1908 angered Russia and Serbia. Serbia, aiming to unite Slavic populations, gained more territory during the Balkan Wars 1912 to 1913. Austria-Hungary, already concerned about Serbian nationalism, grew increasingly hostile, especially after uncovering a Russian spy in 1913. The assassination that sparked it all. On June 28, 1914, Serbian nationalist Gavrilo Princip assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie, in Sarajevo. This act triggered a diplomatic crisis. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia and suspected, though without proof, that the Serbian government was involved. Serbia's response and Austria-Hungary's reaction. Serbia's Prime Minister Nikola Pašić offered condolences but maintained that the assassinations were Austria-Hungary's internal matter. However, some Serbian nationalists celebrated the killings, which infuriated Vienna. Austria-Hungary's Chief of Staff, Franz Conrad von Hetzendorf, had long advocated war against Serbia. Now, influential figures across the empire joined the call for military action. A tipping point. The assassination did not cause war immediately, but it was the spark that ignited the July crisis. Austria-Hungary, backed by Germany, prepared for a confrontation. With alliances and tensions already in place, the world stood on the brink of a catastrophic conflict. Germany's blank check. After the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, Austria-Hungary sought Germany's support before acting against Serbia. On July 6, Kaiser Wilhelm gave Austria the infamous blank check promising unconditional support even if war spread across Europe. Germany believed Russia was unprepared for war and urged Austria to act quickly. However, internal disagreements and logistical delays slowed Austria's response. Crafting the ultimatum. Hungary's Prime Minister, István Tisza, hesitated to back an immediate war. Hungary already had a significant Serbian population, and a conflict could worsen internal tensions. Tisza insisted on issuing an ultimatum to Serbia as a last chance for peace. The ultimatum, finalized on July 19th, was designed to be almost impossible for Serbia to accept. However, Austria-Hungary's troops were still on leave for the harvest, delaying mobilization. International maneuvering. Meanwhile, diplomacy took center stage. French President Raymond Poincaré and his Prime Minister visited Russia, strengthening the Franco-Russian alliance. If Austria moved too quickly, Paris and Moscow could coordinate a unified response. On July 23, Austria-Hungary presented its ultimatum to Serbia, demanding harsh concessions, including allowing Austrian officials to operate within Serbia to suppress anti-Austrian activity. Serbia, supported by Russia, agreed to most of the demands, but not all. Tensions escalate. Austria-Hungary rejected Serbia's partial compliance and declared war on July 28, 1914. What was intended as a localized conflict began spiraling out of control. Russia, bound to protect Serbia, started mobilizing its forces. Germany, viewing this as an act of aggression, declared war on Russia on August 1st. Germany also had plans to quickly defeat France, Russia's ally, leading to a declaration of war against France on August 3rd. The wild card, Britain. Britain was initially hesitant to join the conflict. Public opinion and political divisions made war unpopular. However, Germany's invasion of neutral Belgium on August 4th, part of its strategy to outflank France, drew Britain into the war. A world war begins. What started as a regional crisis exploded into a global conflict. The July crisis revealed how entangled alliances and conflicting ambitions could turn a single event into a catastrophe. The dominoes fall. From diplomacy to mobilization. The tension between Europe's great powers reached a boiling point in late July 1914. What began as a regional conflict between Austria-Hungary and Serbia now threatened to engulf the entire continent. France, Russia, and the ultimatum. As the crisis deepened, France and Russia sought to strengthen their alliance. During a meeting in St. Petersburg, French President Raymond Poincaré reassured Russian leaders of France's unwavering support. However, Poincaré also stressed the importance of securing British involvement, famously saying, "We must get her to come into our alliance." Austria-Hungary, meanwhile, carefully timed its next move. On July 23rd, while the French leadership was at sea, Vienna presented Serbia with an ultimatum, its demands: particularly allowing Austrian officials to prosecute Serbian citizens threatened Serbian sovereignty. Serbia accepted most of the demands but rejected those violating its constitution. Austria-Hungary dismissed this response and declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. Mobilization and the tipping point. Russia, determined to protect Serbia and its influence in the Balkans, began partial mobilization. However, Russian generals warned Tsar Nicholas II that a partial mobilization would disrupt their military strategy and alarm Germany. On July 30th, Nicholas reluctantly ordered full mobilization. In Germany, Kaiser Wilhelm exchanged emotional telegrams with his cousin, Tsar Nicholas, pleading for peace. Yet behind the scenes, German leaders prepared for war. Germany's Schlieffen Plan required a swift attack on France before Russia could fully mobilize, but hesitation risked derailing this strategy. Failed diplomacy. As Europe edged closer to war, Britain attempted mediation. On July 29th, Foreign Secretary Edward Grey proposed that Austria-Hungary halt its advance at Belgrade to avoid a wider conflict. Simultaneously, Germany's Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg sought British neutrality by promising not to annex French territories. The British cabinet remained divided, public opinion and political opposition made war unpopular, and Britain avoided committing to either side. One minister summarized the indecision: it was decided not to decide. The road to war. On July 31st, Germany issued an ultimatum to Russia, demanding an end to mobilization. At the same time, it asked France and Britain to declare neutrality. France prepared for war, while Britain still wavered. Kaiser Wilhelm declared a state of threatening danger of war, signaling Germany's pre-mobilization. Meanwhile, Austria-Hungary claimed it was too late to pursue alternatives like occupying Belgrade, and German Chief of Staff Helmuth von Moltke urged Austria to act decisively. The first week of August. By August 1st, Germany declared war on Russia. On August 3rd, it declared war on France. The Schlieffen Plan required invading neutral Belgium to outflank France, and Germany began its march through Belgian territory. This invasion triggered Britain's entry into the war on August 4th. The final diplomatic efforts. As July came to an end, European leaders scrambled to control events spiraling out of their grasp. Prime Minister Herbert Asquith of Britain described the surreal moment when he presented a draft telegram to King George V. The poor king was hauled from his bed. All he did was suggest making it more personal by adding the words "My dear Nicky" and signing it Georgie. Despite the king's personal touch, diplomacy was losing out to military pressure. On July 31st, French General Joseph Joffre warned his government that Germany's rapid mobilization might leave France at a critical disadvantage. Under this pressure, France mobilized on August 1st. By then, Germany was also mobilizing. Kaiser Wilhelm II, reluctant to proceed with war, tried to halt the Schlieffen Plan, a complex strategy requiring Germany to defeat France quickly before turning to Russia. His chief of staff, Helmuth von Moltke, refused, insisting that the massive mobilization could not be stopped. Wilhelm, frustrated, reportedly said, "If I order it, it must be possible." Meanwhile, Germany issued ultimatums to Belgium and Russia, claiming preemptive defense. Belgium rejected Germany's demands, affirming its independence with a firm reply. No strategic interest justifies such a breach of law. Belgium will repel any infringement of its rights by all means in its power. The war begins. On August 2nd, Germany invaded neutral Luxembourg and delivered an ultimatum to Belgium. The following day, Germany declared war on France. Finally, on August 4th, German troops entered Belgium, violating its neutrality. Britain, honouring its treaty to protect Belgium, declared war on Germany. By the end of August 4, 1914, the great powers of Europe were at war. Blame and the search for answers. The First World War would claim over 20 million lives, but even before the fighting ended, a new conflict began, the battle over who was to blame. Colour books and the blame game. Shortly after the war broke out, each power published a colour book to justify its actions and shift responsibility to others. For instance, one Germany published the White Book, accusing Russia and France of escalating the crisis. To Britain, highlighted Germany's invasion of Belgium as a violation of international law. After the war, the Treaty of Versailles explicitly placed the blame on Germany and its allies. But historians have continued debating this ever since. The major theories. 1. Germany's intentional role. In the 1960s, German historian Fritz Fischer argued that Germany had long planned for war to achieve its imperial ambitions. According to Fischer, German leaders pressured Austria-Hungary to escalate the crisis, knowing it would lead to a broader conflict. 2. Russia's escalation. More recently, historian Sean McMeekin highlighted Russia's decision to mobilize, turning a regional Balkan conflict into a continental war. 3. Britain's missteps. Historian Niall Ferguson blamed Britain for its indecisiveness, which misled Germany into thinking Britain might remain neutral. 4. The sleepwalker theory. Christopher Clark's influential sleepwalker theory suggests no single power intended it. Could war have been avoided? Many argue the war wasn't inevitable. For example, Austria-Hungary could have acted swiftly against Serbia instead of waiting nearly a month to deliver its ultimatum. Britain might have deterred Germany by clearly committing to support France and Russia earlier in the crisis. However, the rigid military strategies of the time, like Germany's Schlieffen Plan, left little room for political maneuvering. The focus on rapid mobilization forced nations to act first and negotiate later. The cultural context. Some historians, like James Jull, argue that early 20th century culture viewed war as a tool for progress and defense of national interests. In this context, political leaders deferred to military commanders, whose plans often dictated decisions. For example, Russia's decision for partial mobilization, intended as a defensive move, alarmed Germany and accelerated its own mobilization. Germany's invasion of Belgium, seen as a strategic necessity, brought Britain into the war, an outcome Germany desperately wanted to avoid. This clash between political goals and military strategies highlights a critical tension in the July crisis. Wars are meant to serve political objectives, but in 1914, politics often became subordinate to military necessity. Legacy of the July crisis. The events of 1914 reshaped the world. The war that followed would last for years and devastate entire continents. But even now, over a century later, the debate continues. Who was to blame? Could the war have been prevented? And what lessons can we learn?